Everyone on that flight thought she was just another quiet passenger heading home. No cameras, no uniforms, no sign of importance, until one short call sign crackled through the radio, and everything changed. Inside the cockpit of an elite fighter jet, seasoned pilots who had faced combat without blinking suddenly froze. Their voices dropped, their posture shifted, and something rare happened in the sky that day. This was not panic. This was respect, the kind that is earned only once in a lifetime. What started as a routine journey turned into a moment so powerful that hardened F-22 pilots did something they almost never do. They stood at attention. Who was this woman really? Why did one phrase stop some of the most advanced pilots on Earth in their tracks? And how did an ordinary seat on a passenger plane become the center of an unforgettable military moment? Stay with me till the end, because this story will completely change how you see the people sitting quietly next to you on a flight. And before we begin, comment where you are watching from and let me know if you have ever had a flight you will never forget. Just minutes earlier, nothing about the flight stood out at all. The cabin lights were dim. The soft hum of the engines filled the air, and passengers were lost in their own small worlds, some scrolling on their phones, others resting their heads against the window. She sat quietly in her seat. No special treatment, no one stopping to talk to her, dressed simply like someone trying to blend in, carrying only a small bag and the calm look of a person used to traveling alone. To the flight crew, she was just another name on the manifest, another passenger heading from one city to another, with no reason for curiosity or concern. Outside the aircraft, high above the clouds, military jets cut clean lines through the sky, performing their own routine tasks, unaware that a normal civilian flight below them carried a story no one was ready for yet. At that moment, everything felt ordinary, predictable, almost forgettable, and that is what made what happened next so impossible to ignore. Long before she ever stepped onto that flight, her life had been shaped by places most people never see and responsibilities few are ever trusted with. Even though she never spoke about it, it lived quietly in the way she carried herself. She had spent years moving through secure hallways, listening more than she talked, learning how to stay calm when decisions carried real weight, the kind of weight that could change lives in seconds. To the outside world, she was known by ordinary titles, jobs that sounded simple and unremarkable. But behind those labels was someone who had worked alongside pilots, commanders, and planners, always just outside the spotlight. She learned early that true authority does not announce itself. It waits, it observes, and it steps forward only when necessary. And that habit followed her everywhere, even onto a commercial flight where no one was supposed to notice her. Now, sitting among strangers who had no idea who she was or where she had been, her past stayed hidden, quiet, and patient, waiting for the moment it would surface without warning. As the flight continued smoothly through open skies, tiny details began to shift in ways no one in the cabin could notice. But in the world of radios and radar, something felt different. A routine check turned into a longer pause than usual. A voice on the channel hesitated for just a second, as if double-checking what they were seeing on the screen. In the cockpit of the nearby fighter jets, the pilots exchanged quick glances. Nothing dramatic yet, just a quiet sense that this was no longer completely routine. Down in the passenger cabin, she remained still, eyes forward, unaware that her presence had triggered questions far beyond the aircraft walls, questions that were now moving rapidly through secured frequencies. The air stayed calm, the engine stayed steady, but an invisible tension began tightening, the kind that builds when professionals realize they are moments away from something they did not expect. Then it happened. A single line came through the radio, clear, controlled, and impossible to ignore, a call sign spoken aloud that did not belong on an ordinary passenger flight. The cockpit fell silent, not because of confusion, but because every pilot in that channel instantly understood the weight of what they had just heard. Hands that moments ago moved casually over controls now froze in place. Voices that were relaxed snapped into precision, and the atmosphere shifted from routine to reverent in a heartbeat. There was no alarm, no raised voices, just a sudden awareness that someone of extreme importance was sharing the same airspace, hidden in plain sight below them. In that instant, the idea of an ordinary journey vanished completely, replaced by a quiet, undeniable truth. This flight was now something else entirely. As the meaning of that call sign settled in, recognition spread through the pilots like a current, quick, silent, and absolute. There was no need for further explanation, no questions asked over the radio. They knew exactly who was on board that aircraft and what she represented. The tone shifted from alert to respectful, every word now chosen carefully, every movement deliberate, as if the sky itself had become a formal space. In that moment, she was no longer an unseen passenger traveling quietly among strangers. She was someone whose presence demanded discipline, honor, and acknowledgement. A clear decision formed without being spoken. This was no longer just about airspace or protocol. It was about respect and how you show it when it truly matters. The change was immediate and precise. Like a switch being flipped, the pilots adjusted their formation, their movements sharp and exact. Every action now following the highest level of protocol. Engines roared with controlled power as the fighter jets repositioned, not in aggression, but in protection, creating a silent escort through the open sky. Voices on the radio were short and professional, stripped of anything unnecessary. Each response delivered with perfect timing, as if rehearsed, even though this moment could never be planned. Inside the passenger aircraft, nothing appeared different. The seatbelt sign stayed the same. The cabin remained calm, yet above and around it, elite pilots were executing maneuvers reserved for only the most significant situations. What looked like empty air to everyone else had become a stage for discipline, precision, and unspoken respect unfolding at full speed. This was the moment everything finally made sense. The reason that single call sign carried so much weight. The reason the sky itself seemed to pause. She was not just connected to aviation, she was part of the legacy that shaped it, someone whose authority came not from rank on her shoulder, but from years of trust earned in the most critical rooms imaginable. For the pilots, this was more than procedure, it was recognition of a figure whose decisions had protected them long before they ever took to the air. One by one, the jets aligned, wings steady, speed matched perfectly, a formation that spoke louder than words ever could. In that silent alignment, respect was made visible, not for cameras, not for history books, but for one woman traveling quietly below, whose influence reached far beyond what anyone on that flight could ever imagine. As quickly as it began, the intensity eased, formations loosened, radios returned to their normal rhythm, and the sky slipped back into its familiar calm. The fighter jets peeled away one by one, each pilot carrying the quiet weight of what they had just witnessed, a moment they knew would stay with them far longer than any routine mission. Down in the cabin, passengers continued their journey unaware that history, in its own small way, had just brushed past them at 30,000 feet. The flight crew carried on as trained, but something had shifted, an unspoken awareness that they had been part of something rare and deeply meaningful. What remained was not excitement or drama, but a calm sense of pride, the kind that settles in after you realize you were present for something truly special. When the plane finally touched down and the doors opened, she stood up like everyone else, waiting her turn, no applause, no announcement, just quiet steps down the aisle. To the people around her, she was still just a fellow passenger, someone they would forget by the time they reached the baggage claim. But in the sky above, elite pilots would remember her for the rest of their lives. Not for who she appeared to be, but for what she represented: service, responsibility, and decisions made when no one was watching. Stories like this remind us that some of the most important people in the world move silently among us, carrying histories we will never know. So the next time you board a flight and glance at the stranger beside you, remember this: greatness does not always wear a uniform, and respect does not always announce itself.